When 12-year-old Jamal Washington is suspended for wearing a hoodie on a cold day at Westbrook Middle School, it seems like a simple case of unfair treatment. Other students, white students, wear hoodies without consequences. But Jamal's a simple question, why can they wear hoodies but I can't, sets off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted. As Jamal and his mother Leah fight against the unfair suspension, their story catches the attention of seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton. Through his foundation, Mission 44, Hamilton reaches out to support the Washington family in ways that will transform not just Jamal's life, but schools across the nation. What no one knows is that Hamilton's interest in the case runs deeper than advocacy. He sees in Jamal's experience a reflection of his own painful past, a connection he's kept private until now. The morning started like any other for 12-year-old Jamal Washington. He woke up early, made his bed, and helped his little sister Amara get ready for school. Through their apartment window, he could see dark clouds hanging over Birmingham. The weather report said it would be one of the coldest October days on record. "Don't forget your warm clothes today," his mother Leah called from the kitchen where she was packing lunches. She worked the night shift as a nurse at Queen Elizabeth Hospital and still made time to see them off to school. "I won't, Mum," Jamal promised, grabbing his black hoodie from the hook by the door. It was his favorite, soft from many washes, with a small logo of his favorite soccer team, Aston Villa, on the chest. The walk to the bus stop was chilly. Jamal pulled his hoodie over his school uniform and stuffed his hands in the pockets. The bus was late as usual, making him and Amara wait in the cold for 15 minutes. By the time they reached Westbrook Middle School, Jamal's fingers felt like ice. He dropped Amara at the primary side of the building and rushed to his first class, keeping his hoodie on for warmth. "The heating's broken again," his friend Tyler whispered as Jamal slid into his seat. All around the classroom, students huddled in jackets and sweaters. Their science teacher, Ms. Lakshmi, wore a thick cardigan and didn't mention anyone's extra layers as she started her lesson on the solar system. Jamal was drawing Neptune in his notebook when a voice came over the speaker. "Attention all students. This is Principal Thornton. Remember that all outerwear must be stored in lockers during school hours. Thank you for your cooperation." A few students groaned softly, but no one moved to remove their extra clothes. Ms. Lakshmi glanced at the speaker and then continued teaching as if nothing had happened. When the bell rang, Jamal gathered his books and headed for math class. In the hallway, he passed Principal Margaret Thornton, a tall woman with steel-gray hair who rarely smiled. "Mr. Washington," she called sharply, "remove that hoodie at once." Jamal stopped, surprised to be singled out. He looked around and noticed other students wearing extra layers too. "But it's really cold, Principal Thornton," he said politely. "The heating isn't working properly." Her lips thinned to a straight line. "The dress code applies regardless of temperature. Take it off now." Jamal hesitated. Just then, a group of 8th graders walked by. 2 white boys among them wore hoodies, but Principal Thornton said nothing to them. "Excuse me, Principal Thornton," Jamal said, his voice small but steady. "Those students are wearing hoodies too." Her face darkened. "Are you arguing with me, Mr. Washington?" "No, ma'am. I just—" "To the office. Now." She pointed down the hall. "And take that hoodie off immediately." With burning cheeks, Jamal removed his hoodie and tucked it under his arm. Students watched as he walked to the office, head held high despite his embarrassment. In the office, the secretary, Mrs. Foster, looked up from her computer. "Jamal, this is unusual. What brings you here?" Before he could answer, Principal Thornton swept in behind him. "Mrs. Foster, please call Jamal's mother." He's being suspended for 3 days for defiance of school authority and dress code violations. Suspended? Jamal gasped. But I just asked a question. And that question challenged my authority, Principal Thornton replied coldly. Perhaps during your suspension, you'll learn proper respect. Mrs. Foster looked uncomfortable, but reached for the phone. Jamal sat on a hard plastic chair, clutching his hoodie, trying not to cry. He'd never been in trouble before. He was on the honor roll. His science project on renewable energy had won first place last year. Your mother will be here soon, Mrs. Foster told him after making the call. She slipped him a tissue when Principal Thornton wasn't looking. The minutes ticked by slowly. Jamal thought about the science test on Friday that he would now miss, about the group project due next week, about how his mother would have to take time off work when they really needed the money. The office door opened, and Leah Washington rushed in. She still wore her hospital scrubs under her coat, having come directly from her shift. "What's happened?" she asked, looking from Jamal to Principal Thornton with concern. "Your son refused to follow the dress code and then argued when instructed to comply," Principal Thornton explained. "We have a zero-tolerance policy for defiance." Leah placed a protective hand on Jamal's shoulder. He was wearing a hoodie? That's it? He was breaking school rules and challenging authority when corrected. "It was freezing in class, Mum," Jamal said quietly. "The heating is broken." Everyone was wearing extra clothes. Leah looked around the office, then through the window to the hallway, where students passed between classes. She pointed to a blonde girl walking by wearing a light gray hoodie. "Like her?" Leah asked. Principal Thornton barely glanced over. "That student has permission due to a medical condition." "And those boys?" Leah pointed to the same 8th graders Jamal had seen earlier, still wearing their hoodies. "Mrs. Washington, I'm not going to debate this with you. The decision has been made. Jamal is suspended for 3 days, effective immediately." Leah stood very still, her nurse's training helping her stay calm even as anger flashed in her eyes. "I'd like to see the dress code policy, please." Mrs. Foster handed her a student handbook. Leah flipped through it quickly, finding the dress code section. It says, outerwear must be appropriate and not disruptive. It doesn't specifically ban hoodies, she noted. "The interpretation of that policy is at the administration's discretion," Principal Thornton replied. "Now please take your son home." Leah looked like she wanted to say more, but instead she helped Jamal gather his backpack and notebooks. "This isn't right," she said quietly to Principal Thornton, "and we both know it." They walked out of the school in silence. At the bus stop, Jamal finally spoke. "I'm sorry, Mum. I didn't mean to get in trouble." Leah pulled him close. "You have nothing to be sorry for, love." As they waited for the bus, Jamal noticed his mother quickly wipe away a tear. She was trying to be strong for him, but he could feel her body trembling with frustration. He slipped his hand into hers and squeezed gently. The bus arrived, its doors opening with a hiss. As they climbed aboard, Jamal wondered how things had gone so wrong so quickly. Yesterday, he was just a regular kid who loved science and soccer. Today, he felt like he had a target on his back, though he didn't understand why. What he didn't know was that this cold October morning was just the beginning. His life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine, and the name Lewis Hamilton, a person he barely knew now, would soon become very important to him. The Washingtons' apartment building came into view as Jamal and his mother stepped off the bus. Mr. Osei, their neighbor from the 3rd floor, was sweeping the front steps. He looked up, surprised to see them in the middle of a school day. "Leah? Jamal? Is everything all right?" he asked, leaning his broom against the railing. Mr. Osei had moved from Ghana 15 years ago and now worked as a community organizer. He wore a colorful scarf even on warm days, and always had a kind word for everyone in the building. "Jamal's been suspended," Leah said, her voice tight, "for wearing a hoodie." Mr. Osei's eyebrows shot up. "A hoodie? That's all?" Jamal stared at his shoes while his mother explained what had happened. The unfairness of it all made his stomach hurt. "I saw other kids wearing hoodies," Jamal finally said. "White kids. The principal didn't say anything to them." Mr. Osei's expression darkened. "Ah, I see." He turned to Leah. "You should document everything while it's fresh in your mind. Times, names, what was said exactly." "You think it would help?" Leah asked. "Knowledge is power," Mr. Osei said simply. "And evidence is even better." Inside their apartment, Leah made tea while Jamal changed out of his school uniform. The suspension note from Principal Thornton sat on the kitchen table like an unwelcome visitor. "Mr. Osei is right," Leah said, setting down mugs of hot tea. "Let's write down everything that happened." They spent the next hour recording every detail. Leah took photos of the school handbook with her phone, highlighting the dress code section that mentioned nothing specific about hoodies. "We should get statements from other students too," she said, "about who wears hoodies and who gets in trouble for it." Jamal's phone buzzed with a text from his classmate Zoe Chen. "Heard what happened. So unfair. Lots of kids talking about it." Jamal showed the message to his mom. "Zoe's dad is a lawyer," he said. "Maybe she can help?" "Text her back." Leah nodded. "Any support helps," Jamal wrote back, explaining what had happened. Zoe replied quickly, taking a picture of Cam and Emma right now, both wearing hoodies in math class. "Teacher says nothing." A photo appeared on his screen showing two white students wearing hoodies similar to Jamal's. "This is good evidence," Leah said. "Ask if any other students want to share what they've seen." By dinner time, Jamal had collected messages from 6 classmates, all confirming that the hoodie rule wasn't enforced equally. Zoe had gone further, posting about the incident on her social media account. "My friend Jamal suspended for wearing a hoodie, while white students wear them without problems. Churn not fair." Westbrook Middle, she included a photo of Jamal from last month's science fair, wearing his school uniform with his black Aston Villa hoodie. In the picture, he looked serious but proud next to his solar energy project. The post quickly gathered comments. "My brother got detention for the same thing last year," wrote one student. "Mrs. Peterson lets the swim team wear hoodies all the time," noted another. "This has been happening for years," posted a former student. Nothing ever changes at Westbrook. Mr. Osei stopped by after dinner with printed copies of the school's discipline policy that he'd found on their website. "Look here," he said, pointing to a section. "It says all students must be treated equally under the Code of Conduct. We have evidence this isn't happening." Leah nodded, adding the papers to their growing pile of documentation. "The question is, who do we take this to? The school board hasn't been very responsive in the past." "We start there," Mr. Osei advised, "but we also prepare to go further if needed. The local education authority. The media, if necessary." That night, Jamal sat at his desk, trying to complete the science homework Ms. Lakshmi had sent via email. The words blurred on the page as he remembered the feeling of walking through the school hallway, everyone watching as Principal Thornton sent him to the office. Would things be different when he returned? Would teachers look at him differently? Would his friends stick by him? His thoughts were interrupted by his mother's voice. "Jamal, are you still awake? Come see this." In the living room, Leah pointed to her laptop screen. Zoe's post had been shared hundreds of times. Comments poured in from parents, students, and community members, many sharing their own stories of unfair treatment at Westbrook and other schools. "It's going viral," Leah said, scrolling through the responses. "People are paying attention." The next morning, Mr. Osei arrived with a local newspaper. There on page 5 was a small article titled, "Local Student Suspended Over Hoodie, Parents." Claim racial bias. Omar Patel wrote this, Mr. Osei explained. He covers education issues for the Birmingham Mail. I called him yesterday. Jamal read the short article, which included quotes from his mother about the incident. "Will this help?" he asked. "Truth always matters," Mr. Osei said, "even when it's uncomfortable." Over the next 2 days, Jamal tried to keep up with his schoolwork. Ms. Lakshmi sent encouraging emails with his assignments, but other teachers were less helpful. He worried about falling behind, especially in science, where they were starting a unit on engineering that he'd been looking forward to all year. Leah juggled her hospital shifts with meetings. She filed a formal complaint with the local education authority, but received only a form letter promising to look into the matter. The school board scheduled a meeting, but it was set for Tuesday at 2 p.m., a time when most working parents couldn't attend. "They're hoping we won't show up," Leah told Jamal as she requested time off from work. But they're wrong. On the 3rd day, Mr. Osei appeared at their door with signs he'd made, "Hoodies are not criminal," and "Equal rules for all students." "We're having a small protest tomorrow morning," he explained. "Just a few parents and community members, peaceful and lawful, but visible." Jamal watched from their apartment window the next morning as 15 people gathered outside Westbrook Middle School with signs. His mother stood among them, looking both nervous and determined. A local news van pulled up, and a reporter began interviewing the protesters. The camera turned to Leah, who spoke clearly despite her obvious nerves. "We're not asking for special treatment," she said. "We're asking for equal treatment. My son was suspended for something that other students do without consequences. The only difference is the color of his skin." That evening, their story appeared on the local news. Jamal watched himself described as a 12-year-old honors student with no previous disciplinary issues. The camera showed his science fair photo, then cut to Principal Thornton declining to comment. "You're famous now," Amara said, bouncing on the couch beside him. "I don't want to be famous," Jamal replied quietly. "I just want to go back to school and be treated fairly." Later, as Jamal was getting ready for bed, he heard his mother on the phone. "Yes, I understand it's a big platform," she was saying. "And yes, Jamal is okay with sharing his story. We want things to change, not just for him, but for all students." When she hung up, her eyes were shining with a mix of worry and hope. "Who was that?" Jamal asked. "Someone from a popular YouTube channel," Leah explained. "They want to talk about what happened at your school. They think your story needs to be heard by more people." Jamal nodded slowly, uncertain how to feel. Part of him wanted everything to go back to normal. But another part understood that sometimes things needed to change, and change didn't come from staying quiet. What neither Jamal nor his mother could know was how far their story would travel, or that on the other side of the country, a world champion race car driver named Lewis Hamilton would soon see their struggle and recognize something that would move him to action. Jamal's suspension ended, and it was time for him to return to school. The morning was filled with nervous energy as he put on his uniform and packed his backpack. "Remember what we talked about," Leah said as she straightened his tie. "Hold your head high. You did nothing wrong." What if Principal Thornton gives? Me trouble again? Jamal asked, his stomach tight with worry. Then we handle it together, she promised. I'm just a phone call away. Mr. Osei was waiting in the hallway to walk Jamal and Amara to the bus stop. Several neighbors joined them, forming a small group of support. Jamal felt both embarrassed and grateful for their kindness. The whole building is behind you, Mr. Osei told him. Sometimes one person's struggle becomes everyone's cause. At school, Jamal felt eyes following him as he walked to his locker. Some students whispered as he passed. Others gave him thumbs up or quiet nods of support. His friend Tyler ran up and bumped his shoulder. Man, you're all over social media, Tyler said. My cousin in London even shared a post about you. Before Jamal could reply, the warning bell rang. They hurried to class, slipping into their seats just as the final bell sounded. Ms. Lakshmi smiled warmly at Jamal, a silent welcome back. After school, Leah took a rare afternoon off to attend the school board meeting. Though scheduled at an inconvenient time, the room was surprisingly full. Parents, teachers, and community members packed the small space, many standing along the back wall. I didn't expect so many people, Leah whispered to Mr. Osei, who had come to support her. Word spreads fast when justice is at stake, he replied. Principal Thornton sat at the front table with the school board members, her face carefully composed. When Jamal's case came up on the agenda, she cleared her throat. I want to clarify that the student in question received discipline not primarily for the hoodie itself, but for his disrespectful attitude when asked to follow the dress code. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Leah stood, her voice steady despite her racing heart. My son asked a reasonable question about why the rule wasn't being applied to everyone equally. That's not disrespect. That's a fair request for explanation. Oh, board member Dr. Yvonne Clark leaned forward. Do we have any data on dress code enforcement at Westbrook? Who receives warnings versus suspensions? The question hung in the air. Principal Thornton shuffled some papers, clearly unprepared. We don't track enforcement by specific demographics, she said carefully. Perhaps we should start, Dr. Clark suggested. Several teachers in the audience nodded their agreement, though they remained silent. After the meeting, Omar Patel, the journalist who had written the newspaper article, approached Leah. The board is feeling the pressure, but they're still dodging the real issue, he said. Would you be willing to do a more in-depth interview? Front page this time. Leah glanced at Jamal, who gave a small nod. Yes, she said. It's time people understood this isn't just about a hoodie. The next day, Omar spent 2 hours at their apartment, recording their story. He took photos of Jamal at his desk, surrounded by science books and the solar panel model he'd built for the science fair. I'm not trying to cause trouble, Jamal told Omar. I just want to be treated the same as everyone else. When the article appeared on Sunday, it filled most of the front page of the Birmingham Mail. The headline read, A Tale of Two Hoodies, How Dress Code Enforcement Exposes Deeper Issues at Local School. Omar had interviewed other families too. Black and brown parents shared stories of their children receiving harsher punishments than white classmates for similar behaviors. A retired teacher from Westbrook confirmed witnessing unequal treatment, but admitted she'd never spoken up. I regret my silence now, she was quoted as saying. We were all afraid of rocking the boat. The article included a photo of Jamal and Leah sitting on their couch, looking determined rather than angry. The caption read, Nurse Leah Washington and her son Jamal are asking for equal treatment, not special treatment. By Monday morning, the story had been picked up by national news outlets. Leah's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters and supportive community members. Even Jamal's father, who lived in London and wasn't very involved in his life, called to check on him. The YouTube video that Amara Jones created about Jamal's case went live on Tuesday. Amara was famous for her thoughtful takes on social justice issues, and she placed Jamal's story in a broader context. What happened to Jamal Washington isn't an isolated incident, she explained in the video. Research shows black students in the UK are excluded from school at rates up to 6 times higher than their white peers, often for subjective infractions like disrespect or attitude. Amara included studies from education researchers and interviews with experts on the school-to-prison pipeline, how harsh school discipline policies pushed black children out of education and increased their chances of ending up in the justice system. The video ended with Amara speaking directly to the camera. When we allow dress codes to be weapons rather than guidelines, we tell some children they don't belong in spaces of learning, and that message follows them far beyond school walls. Within 48 hours, the video had over 1 million views. At school, Jamal felt the impact immediately. Some teachers went out of their way to be kind to him, while others seemed uncomfortable when he raised his hand in class. A few students avoided him entirely, as if his situation might be contagious. In science class, Ms. Lakshmi pulled him aside after the bell. "I want you to know," she said quietly. "Many of us teachers disagree with what happened. We just don't always know how to speak." "Up!" Jamal nodded, unsure what to say. "If you need help catching up on anything you missed, I'm here," she added. "Your engineering project shows real promise." That small moment of kindness made the day easier to bear. After school, Mr. Osei organized another demonstration, larger this time. Over 50 people gathered outside Westbrook Middle School with signs and banners. They didn't shout or disrupt classes. They simply stood in silent witness, a human reminder that the community was watching. News cameras captured the scene. When reporters asked for comment, Mr. Osei stepped forward. "We stand here peacefully to support equal treatment for all students," he said. "This is not about attacking the school. It's about making it better for everyone." The hashtag "Hoodies are not criminal" began trending online as people across the country shared similar stories of dress code rules being used unfairly against black and brown students. That evening, Jamal watched the coverage on television with his mother and sister. Seeing the gathering of supporters made his chest feel tight with emotion. "Do you think it will change anything?" he asked his mother. Leah squeezed his hand. "Change takes time. But yes, I believe it will. People are listening. Now!" What she didn't tell him was how exhausted she felt. Taking time off work for meetings and interviews meant smaller paychecks. Some of her co-workers were supportive, but others suggested she was making everything about race or creating drama. Later that night, after Jamal went to bed, Leah sat alone at the kitchen table. She scrolled through her phone, reading comments on news articles about her son. Most were supportive, but some were cruel, suggesting she was a bad parent or using Jamal for attention. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly when she heard a small sound. Jamal stood in the doorway in his pajamas. "Are you okay, Mum?" he asked. Leah straightened her shoulders and smiled. "Just tired, love. It's been a long week." Jamal came to her side and wrapped his arms around her. "You're the bravest person I know," he whispered. As they held each other in the quiet kitchen, neither could have imagined that at that very moment, across the ocean, Lewis Hamilton was scrolling through social media after a day of race training, or that the champion driver was about to click on a video that would connect their lives in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The next morning, Jamal walked into school feeling a strange mix of worry and pride. Students he barely knew nodded to him in the hallways. A group of 8th graders gave him thumbs up as he passed their lockers. "You're like famous now," said his friend Tyler during lunch. "Even my parents were talking about your story last night." Jamal pushed his food around his plate. "I don't feel famous. I just feel different." Different was the right word. Teachers who once barely noticed him now watched him carefully. Some seemed kinder, others more distant. Principal Thornton was nowhere to be seen, staying in her office most of the day. After school, Jamal found Zoe Chen waiting by his locker. "Have you seen how big this is getting?" she asked, showing him her phone. "Your hashtag is everywhere." Jamal leaned closer to look. People from all over the country were sharing stories with Hoodies are not criminal. Photos showed students wearing hoodies in solidarity, some holding signs that read, "Dress codes should be fair," and "Stand with Jamal." "This isn't just about you anymore," Zoe said excitedly. "People are talking about how dress codes are used to target black students everywhere." Jamal wasn't sure how to feel about that. He hadn't meant to start a movement. He just wanted to stay warm on a cold day. At home that evening, Amara showed him that Amara Jones had posted a follow-up video. This one included clips from news reports about the protests at Westbrook Middle School and interviews with education experts. "Studies showed that black students don't misbehave more than white students," one expert explained. "But they are punished more often and more harshly, often for subjective infractions like attitude or disrespect." The video ended with Amara Jones speaking directly to the camera. "When we call attention to these patterns, some people say we're making everything about race. But the data shows race is already a factor in who gets punished. We didn't create this reality. We're just refusing to ignore it any longer." The comments section overflowed with responses. "This happened to my brother last year. He got detention for a hoodie, while white kids wore them all the time. I'm a teacher, and I see this every day, but don't know how to change it. Jamal is so brave for standing up. I would have just taken the suspension and stayed quiet." That night, Jamal had trouble sleeping. The attention made him uncomfortable, but he also felt a growing sense that maybe, just maybe, something important was happening. The next day at school, Ms. Lakshmi asked him to stay after class. "I wanted to make sure you're caught up on the engineering unit," she said, spreading out some papers on her desk. "This is important material if you're thinking about science careers." Jamal nodded gratefully. "I don't want to fall behind." "You know," Ms. Lakshmi said carefully, "I was, once, sent home from school for wearing a bindi." She touched the small decorative mark between her eyebrows. "The teacher said it was distracting." "That's not fair," Jamal said. "No, it wasn't. And I wish someone had spoken up then, the way your mother is speaking up now." She smiled at him. "Now, let's look at these circuit diagrams." That small conversation made Jamal feel less alone. Maybe there were more people like Miss Lakshmi who understood but had stayed quiet until now. Meanwhile, the story continued to spread. Amara Jones's second video reached 2 million views in 3 days. News programs debated dress code policies and racial bias in schools. The Birmingham Mail ran another article showing that black students at Westbrook were 3 times more likely to be suspended than white students for similar infractions. Some people pushed back. On social media, comments appeared arguing that rules are rules and this is just playing the race card. A few parents started a counter hashtag to support Principal Thornton. One evening, Leah received a phone call from Dr. Clark, the school board member who had asked about data during the I2T meeting. We're reviewing all disciplinary actions from the past 3 years, Dr. Clark told her. The preliminary findings are concerning. Black students are receiving harsher punishments across the board. And what will you do about it? Leah asked. We're scheduling an emergency board meeting for next week. I think you should be there. The conversation gave Leah hope that real change might be possible. She shared the news with Jamal over dinner. See? Speaking up matters, she told him. Jamal nodded, but he looked troubled. Some kids at school say I'm causing trouble. That I should have just taken off the hoodie and not made a big deal about it. Leah reached across the table and took his hand. There's a difference between causing trouble and standing up to trouble that's already there. You did the second one, and I'm proud of you for it. Later that week, Amara Jones called Leah directly. Your story has touched so many people, she explained. I'd like to do a follow-up video focusing more on Jamal himself, his interests, his dreams, what kind of student he is. I think it's important for people to see him as a whole person, not just a symbol. After thinking it over, Leah and Jamal agreed to a video call with Amara. She asked Jamal about his favorite subjects, science and math, his hobbies, building model cars and playing football, and his dreams for the future. I want to be an engineer, Jamal told her. I like figuring out how things work and making them better. Amara's new video, titled Meet Jamal, the boy behind the hoodie story, showed a talented, thoughtful 12-year-old with big dreams and a gentle spirit. She included footage of his science fair projects and clips of him playing football with friends. Before you form an opinion about this case, Amara said at the end, ask yourself, would your reaction be different if Jamal looked different? If his name was different? If he lived in a different neighborhood? These are the questions we must all consider if we want to build truly fair schools. This video spread even faster than the others, touching people's hearts around the world. Parents, teachers, and students shared it with personal messages about how Jamal's story had made them think differently about rules and fairness. And somewhere in Monaco, preparing for his next race, Lewis Hamilton watched the video on his tablet, his expression growing more thoughtful with each passing minute. When it ended, he sat very still, memories from his own childhood stirring in his mind. Then he reached for his phone and made a call. Jason, he said to the director of his foundation, Mission 44. There's something I think we need to get involved with. A case in Birmingham that's getting attention. It's about a young boy named Jamal Washington. Lewis Hamilton sat in his apartment in Monaco, the city lights twinkling outside his window. The 7-time Formula One world champion had just finished a long day of training, but his mind wasn't on racing now. It was on the video he'd just watched about a 12-year-old boy suspended for wearing a hoodie. I'm sending you the link, Lewis continued, forwarding Amara Jones's video to Jason. This isn't just about a dress code. It's about who gets punished and who doesn't. It's about belonging. As a black driver in a sport dominated by white men, Lewis understood what it meant to face different rules than everyone else. Growing up in Stevenage, not far from Birmingham, he had often been the only black child in racing competitions. He remembered the extra scrutiny, the whispers, the need to be perfect when others could make mistakes. I'll watch it right away, Jason promised. We'll set up a team call for tomorrow. Lewis ended the call and looked at his phone again. He scrolled through Jamal's story, reading comments and news articles. Something about the boy's expression in the photos, determined but hurt, stirred memories Lewis usually kept buried. The next morning, Lewis joined a video call with the Mission 44 team. The foundation, which he had started to promote diversity in education and sports, was already working on several initiatives to address inequality in schools. Everyone seen the videos? Lewis asked after greetings were exchanged. Heads nodded on the screen. The team had spent the morning researching Jamal's case and the broader issue of dress code enforcement. "This fits perfectly with our work on school exclusions," said Marissa, the education policy expert. Black students in the UK are excluded, at much higher rates than their white peers, often for subjective infractions. "What do we know about this school?" Lewis asked. "Westbrook Middle School has a history of disproportionate discipline," Jason explained. "Local education advocates have raised concerns before, but nothing changed. Jamal's case is just bringing attention to a long-standing problem." "And the boy himself?" Lewis leaned forward. "Excellent student. Loves science and engineering. Single. Mother, who works as a nurse. No previous discipline issues." Marissa read from her notes. "By all accounts, a bright kid with a promising future." Lewis nodded, thinking. "That could have been me," he said quietly. "A black kid who loved technical subjects with big dreams. If someone had pushed me out of spaces where I could learn..." The team was silent, understanding the weight of his words. Lewis Hamilton hadn't become a champion by accident. He'd worked incredibly hard. But he'd also had people who believed in him, who kept doors open when others wanted to close them. "Twitter need to support this family," Lewis decided. "Not just with words, but with action. And we need to use this moment to push for bigger changes in how schools handle discipline." The team spent the next 2 hours developing a plan. They would reach out to Leah Washington directly. They would commission research on dress code enforcement across British schools. They would develop guidelines for schools on creating fair and equitable policies. "One more thing," Lewis added before they ended the call. "I want to speak with Jamal personally. Not for publicity. No cameras, no social media. Just to let him know he's not alone." Meanwhile, in Birmingham, Jamal was trying to focus on a math worksheet. School had become increasingly strange. Some teachers treated him like he was made of glass. Others seemed annoyed by his presence. Students either wanted to be his new best friend or avoided him completely. "How's the homework going?" Leah asked, coming into his room after her hospital shift. "It's okay," Jamal said, not looking up. "Ms. Lakshmi helped me catch up in science, but I'm still behind in math." Leah sat on the edge of his bed. "The emergency? School board meeting is tomorrow. Dr. Clark says they're going to discuss changes to the discipline policies." Jamal nodded, but didn't seem excited. Leah touched his shoulder gently. "What's wrong, love?" "This is good news." Jamal finally looked up, his eyes troubled. "Tommy Baker said, I'm only getting attention because I'm playing the victim. He said if I just followed the rules like everyone else, none of this would have happened." Leah took a deep breath, controlling her anger at Tommy's words. "And what do you think?" "I think I was just cold that day," Jamal said simply. "I didn't want any of this, but..." He hesitated. "But what?" "But I'm also glad people are talking about it now, about how some rules aren't the same for everyone." Leah smiled, proud of her son's wisdom. "That's exactly right. Sometimes things that seem small, like a hoodie, are actually about something much bigger." Their conversation was interrupted by the ringing of Leah's phone. She didn't recognize the number, but answered anyway. "Mrs. Washington? My name is Jason Roberts from Mission 44. We're a foundation started by Lewis Hamilton to promote equity in education. I was wondering if you might have time to speak with us about your son's situation." Leah's eyes widened. "Lewis Hamilton? The racing driver?" "Yes, that's right. Mr. Hamilton saw the videos about Jamal and was quite moved by your story. He's very interested in supporting your efforts." Leah put the phone on speaker so Jamal could hear. "We'd be happy to speak with you," she said, watching her son's expression shift from confusion to surprise. After arranging a video call for the following day, Leah hung up and turned to Jamal. "Do you know who Lewis Hamilton is?" Jamal nodded, slowly. "He's a famous race car driver. We learned about him in school last year when we studied British sports heroes. But why would he care about me?" "Let's find out," Leah said. They spent the evening looking up information about Lewis Hamilton and Mission 44. They learned how Hamilton, the only black driver in Formula One, had faced racism throughout his career, but had overcome it to become one of the most successful drivers in history. They read about how he had started Mission 44 to help young people from underrepresented groups access opportunities in education and sports. The foundation worked to reduce school exclusions, which disproportionately affected black students in the UK. "He grew up not far from here," Jamal said, reading an article about Hamilton's childhood in Stevenage. "And he liked technical subjects too, like me." The next day, Jamal could barely focus in class, knowing that after school he would be speaking with Lewis Hamilton's foundation. When the final bell rang, he rushed home to find Mr. Osei already there, helping Leah set up her laptop for the video call. "This is a big opportunity," Mr. Osei told them. "Mission 44 has real influence. They can help make changes that last." When the call connected, 4 faces appeared on the screen. Jason introduced himself and the team from Mission 44. They explained their work and how they wanted to support Jamal's case. "And there's someone else who'd like to join us," Jason said, as a 5th window opened on the screen. Lewis Hamilton's familiar face appeared, smiling warmly. Jamal caught his breath, hardly believing he was looking at the famous driver. "Hello, Jamal." "Hello, Mrs. Washington," Lewis said. "Thank you for speaking with us today. I wanted to tell you personally how moved I was by your story." For the next 30 minutes, they talked about what had happened at Westbrook Middle School. Lewis asked thoughtful questions about Jamal's experience and how the school had responded. He listened carefully to Leah's concerns about the impact on her son's education. Then Lewis shared something unexpected. "When I was about your age, Jamal, I loved wearing my hoodie too. It made me feel comfortable, confident. But there were places where I was treated differently for wearing it, where people looked at me with suspicion, while my white friends could wear the same thing without anyone noticing." Jamal leaned forward, surprised. "Really? Even you?" Lewis nodded. "Even me. That's why I started Mission 44. Because talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. And sometimes small things, like dress codes, can become big barriers if they're not applied fairly." By the end of the call, Mission 44 had outlined a plan to support Jamal and address the broader issues at Westbrook. They would provide legal resources for the Washington family and commission research on dress code enforcement across British schools. But the biggest surprise came just before they said goodbye. "Jamal," Lewis said, "I hear you're interested in engineering and science. Is that right?" Jamal nodded. "Yes, sir, especially cars and how they work." Lewis smiled. "Well, the British Grand Prix is coming up next month. How would you feel about being my special guest? You could meet the team engineers and see how a Formula One car works up close." Jamal's mouth fell open. He looked at his mother, who seemed equally shocked. "We'd be honored," Leah managed to say. When the call ended, Jamal sat in stunned silence. The world-famous Lewis Hamilton had invited him to the British Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton understood what he'd been through. Lewis Hamilton was going to help make things right. "Did that really just happen?" he asked his mother. Leah, whose eyes were shining with tears, nodded. "It really did. And it's only the beginning." That night, As Jamal lay in bed, he thought about his conversation with Lewis Hamilton. For the first time since the Hoodie incident, he felt truly hopeful, not just for himself, but for all the other students who had faced similar treatment. He reached for his notebook and began sketching a race car design, his mind filled with questions he wanted to ask the Mercedes engineers. For the first time in weeks, he fell asleep with a smile on his face, dreaming not of hoodies and principles, but of racing circuits and the sound of powerful engines. The next morning brought a flurry of activity. Jason from Mission 44 called early to set up more meetings with the Washington family. Leah took the day off from the hospital to handle everything. "This is moving so quickly," she told Mr. Osei, who had stopped by with fresh bread from the bakery. "Yesterday, we were just one family trying to be heard. Today, we have Lewis Hamilton's foundation behind us." "That's how change works sometimes," Mr. Osei replied, slicing the bread. Slowly, slowly, then all at once. By midday, an email arrived from Mission 44 with documents attached. The first was a letter of support that Leah could share with the school board. The second was information about legal resources available to the family. The third was an outline of a new research project the Foundation was launching on dress code enforcement across British schools. "They're not just helping us," Leah realized, reading through the materials. "They're using our situation to help others too." That afternoon, a woman named Marissa from Mission 44 arrived at their apartment. She was the Foundation's education policy expert, with a warm smile and braided hair pulled back in a bun. "We'd like to document your experience in detail," she explained, setting up her laptop. "Not just what happened that day with the Hoodie, but all the interactions before and after. Every conversation with Principal Thornton, every response from the school board." For the next 2 hours, Leah shared everything while Marissa took careful notes. When Jamal came home from school, he joined them, adding details from his perspective. "Did you notice this pattern before?" Marissa asked. "Different treatment for different students?" Jamal thought about it. "I guess I did, but I didn't really think about it. It just seemed like the way things were." Marissa nodded. "That's what we're trying to change. These patterns become invisible when we get used to them." After she left, Jamal checked his phone and found it buzzing with messages. News had somehow leaked that Lewis Hamilton and Mission 44 were involved in his case. Classmates wanted details. Even teachers had asked questions during the day. "I don't want to talk about it at school," Jamal told his mother. "It already feels weird enough." Leah understood. "You don't have to share anything you don't want to. This is still your story." The following day, Mission 44 made its involvement official. The Foundation released a statement expressing support for the Washington family and announcing a broader initiative to study dress code enforcement across British schools. When policies that seem neutral on paper are applied differently based on a student's race, we must examine and address that disparity, the statement read. Mission 44 is committed to ensuring all young people have equal access to education, free from discriminatory practices. Lewis Hamilton shared the statement on his social media accounts, adding his personal message. "Jamal's experience resonates with me deeply. I know what it's like to be viewed differently because of the color of your skin. I'm proud that Mission 44 is standing with this brave young man and his family." The post received millions of likes and thousands of comments. Messages of support poured in from around the world, including from other athletes and celebrities. The impact was immediate. Local news stations parked outside Westbrook Middle School, hoping for comments from Principal Thornton or school board members. National newspapers picked up the story, with headlines like F1 champion Hamilton backs suspended student and dress code controversy attracts celebrity support. Some commentators criticized Hamilton for getting involved, suggesting he was overreacting to a simple school discipline issue. Others praised him for using his platform to address systemic inequities. Through it all, Jamal tried to maintain his normal routine. He went to school, did his homework, played football with friends when he could. But things had changed. Some students treated him like a celebrity. Others seemed resentful of the attention. "It's not your fault," Tyler assured him during lunch. "People just don't like having to think about uncomfortable stuff." Ms. Lakshmi continued to be supportive, giving Jamal extra help with science projects. But other teachers seemed unsure how to act around him now that his case had gained national attention. Meanwhile, Mission 44 was working behind the scenes. The foundation arranged for an education lawyer named Omar Davis to help the Washington family navigate the complaint process against the school. Omar had years of experience dealing with similar cases. "The key here is documentation," he explained during their first meeting. "We need to show that the dress code was applied unequally, not just on the day of Jamal's suspension, but as an ongoing pattern." With Omar's guidance, they gathered statements from other students and parents about inconsistent rule enforcement. Zoe Chen's social media posts provided valuable evidence, including photos of white students wearing hoodies without consequences on the same day Jamal was suspended. As the emergency school board meeting approached, Omar helped Leah prepare her statement. "Focus on solutions, not just problems," he advised. "What changes do you want to see?" The night before the meeting, Jamal couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about all the attention, all the people involved now. Part of him wished he could go back to being just a regular student that nobody noticed. Another part understood that something important was happening, something bigger than just one hoodie on one cold day. He got out of bed and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. To his surprise, his mother was already there, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. Jamal shook his head and sat across from her. "Mom, what if nothing changes? What if all this attention just makes things worse?" Leah reached across the table and took his hand. "Change is never guaranteed, Jamal. But silence guarantees that nothing will change. That's why we speak up, even when it's hard." The next day, the school board meeting room was packed. Television cameras lined the back wall. Dr. Clark called the meeting to order, explaining that they would review the dress code policy and recent disciplinary actions at Westbrook Middle School. Principal Thornton sat rigidly at the front, her face a careful mask. When given the chance to speak, she maintained that her actions had been appropriate and consistent with school policy. "We cannot allow students to selectively follow rules based on their personal preferences," she said. "That would lead to chaos in our learning environment." When it was Leah's turn, she spoke clearly and confidently, with Omar Davis beside her. "My son was not seeking chaos," she said. "He was seeking warmth on a cold day, the same as many other students. The difference is that those other students, the white students, were allowed to keep their hoodies on without consequence." She presented the evidence they had gathered, including statements and photos. Then she outlined the changes she hoped to see: clearer policies, consistent enforcement, regular review of discipline data to identify any racial disparities, and training for all staff on recognizing and addressing implicit bias. After several hours of testimony and discussion, the school board voted to form a special committee to rewrite the dress code policy with input from students, parents, and teachers. They also approved a full review of disciplinary actions from the past 3 years to identify any patterns of unequal treatment. Outside the meeting, reporters surrounded Leah. One thrust a microphone toward her. "Mrs. Washington, how do you feel?" About Lewis Hamilton getting involved in your case? Leah smiled. We're grateful for Mr. Hamilton's support and for the resources Mission 44 has provided. This isn't just about my son anymore. It's about making sure all students are treated fairly. That weekend, a package arrived for Jamal. Inside was a Mission 44 hoodie and a handwritten note from Lewis Hamilton. Jamal, wear this with pride. Never stop asking questions. Never stop believing you belong in every room you enter. I'm looking forward to meeting you at Silverstone. Louis Jamal ran his fingers over the signature, hardly believing it was real. He carefully put on the hoodie, feeling its soft fabric and perfect fit. How does it look? He asked his mother, who was watching from the doorway with a smile. Powerful, she said. It looks powerful. Jamal stood taller, feeling a new confidence rise in his chest. For the first time, he understood that this wasn't just about a single unfair suspension. It was about standing up and being counted. It was about making space for yourself and others like you. He thought about Lewis Hamilton, a black man from a working-class family who had fought his way to the top of a sport where people like him were rarely seen. If Hamilton could change the face of Formula One, maybe Jamal could help change things. At Westbrook Middle School. That night, he watched videos of Hamilton racing, studying how the champion handled pressure and criticism with grace. He noticed how Hamilton used his platform to speak about issues that mattered, even when it would have been easier to stay silent. I want to be like that, Jamal whispered to himself. Brave enough to speak up, strong enough to keep going when things get hard. In his journal, he began writing down ideas for his future. Maybe he could be an engineer who designed safer, faster race cars. Maybe he could work on renewable energy systems for vehicles. The possibilities seemed endless now, stretching before him like an open track. What Jamal didn't know was that across town, Principal Thornton was having a very different kind of evening. One filled with uncomfortable questions and difficult realizations as the spotlight on her actions grew ever brighter. Margaret Thornton sat alone in her living room, television muted, scrolling through news articles about Westbrook Middle School. Her name appeared in most of them, often alongside words like biased, unfair, and discriminatory. 25 years in education, and now this was how the world saw her. Her phone rang, the third school board member to call that evening. She let it go to voicemail. What more could she say? She had followed the rules as she understood them. She had maintained order in her school. Wasn't that her job? Yet doubt had begun to creep in. The data presented at the board meeting was hard to ignore. Black and brown students at Westbrook received disciplinary action at 3 times the rate of white students for similar infractions. Had she really not noticed? Or had she simply accepted it as normal? The next morning, Principal Thornton arrived at school earlier than usual. The empty hallways gave her time to think before the day began. In her office, she found a stack of messages, parents wanting meetings, reporters seeking comments, even a few teachers requesting time to discuss the dress code situation. At the bottom of the pile was a note from Ms. Lakshmi. I believe we need to talk about what happened with Jamal. Many of us have concerns about consistent rule enforcement. This surprised her. Ms. Lakshmi was usually so quiet, so careful not to rock the boat. If she was speaking up, others must be feeling the same way. The school day began with an unusual tension. Students whispered in hallways, teachers gathered. In small groups during breaks, parents lingered after drop-off, watching the school with critical eyes. In the teacher's lounge at lunch, conversation stopped when Principal Thornton entered. She filled her coffee cup in awkward silence before Ms. Peterson, the PE teacher, finally spoke. We've been talking about the dress code issue. Miss Peterson said carefully. Many of us feel uncomfortable with how it's been handled. Principal. Thornton set down her cup. The dress code is clearly stated in the handbook. But not clearly enforced, said Mr. Williams, the math teacher who rarely spoke at meetings. I've allowed students to wear hoodies in my classroom on cold days. Many of us have. Yet some students get suspended for it, while others don't. Others nodded in agreement. Ms. Lakshmi spoke next, her voice gentle but firm. I think we need to ask ourselves why black students are disciplined more often than white students. The data shows a clear pattern. Principal Thornton felt heat rising in her face. Are you suggesting I'm racist? The room went silent. Ms. Lakshmi shook her head. I'm suggesting that none of us is immune to bias, including me. The question is whether we're willing to examine it. The conversation was interrupted by an announcement calling Principal Thornton to the front office. A news crew had arrived, requesting comment on Mission 44's involvement with Jamal Washington's case. By mid-afternoon, the pressure had intensified. Dr. Clark from the school board called an emergency meeting for that evening. All staff were required to attend. We need to address this situation head-on, Dr. Clark told Principal Thornton. The spotlight is only getting brighter with Lewis Hamilton involved. The meeting was held in the school library. Teachers filled the chairs, some looking worried, others determined. School board members sat at a table facing them. Principal Thornton took a seat in the front row, feeling strangely like she was on trial. Dr. Clark began by presenting more detailed data on discipline at Westbrook. Charts showed stark disparities, not just in suspensions, but in detentions, office referrals, and attitude citations. These numbers tell a troubling story, Dr. Clark said, one that requires honest reflection and concrete action. Several teachers spoke about witnessing inconsistent rule enforcement. A few shared their own struggles with recognizing subtle biases in how they responded to different students. When it was Principal Thornton's turn to speak, she had prepared a defense of her actions. But looking at the faces around her, the teachers she had worked with for years, the data that couldn't be explained away, something shifted inside her. I have always believed I treated all students fairly, she began slowly. But perhaps believing isn't enough. Perhaps I need to look more closely at the patterns in my decisions. It wasn't a full admission, but it was a start. The tension in the room eased slightly. Dr. Clark then announced a series of changes. A committee of parents, teachers, and students would review and revise all disciplinary procedures. An anonymous reporting system would be created for students to safely report unfair treatment. Training would be provided for all staff on recognizing and addressing implicit bias. And there was one more announcement. Principal Thornton would be taking a temporary leave while the situation was reviewed. Vice Principal Rodriguez would step in as acting principal. The news hit Margaret Thornton like a physical blow. Leave? After all her years of service? She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. Maybe some time away would give her perspective. Maybe it would allow the school to heal. As the meeting ended, staff members broke into small groups, discussing the changes. No one approached Principal Thornton as she gathered her things. Only Ms. Lakshmi caught her eye across the room, offering a small, sad nod of acknowledgement. Meanwhile, the news of the school's response spread quickly. By evening, Jamal and Leah had heard about Principal Thornton's leave and the planned policy changes. Do you think things will really be different? Jamal asked as they ate dinner. It's a good start, Leah said. Real change takes time, but at least they're admitting there's a problem. The next day at school, the atmosphere felt lighter somehow. Vice Principal Rodriguez made an announcement over the intercom. As we work through this challenging time, I want to remind everyone that Westbrook Middle School belongs to all of us. Every student deserves to feel welcome, respected, and fairly treated here. In the hallways, Jamal noticed small changes. Teachers smiled more. Students moved more freely. Even the rule about outerwear seemed to have relaxed, with students wearing hoodies or jackets without comment from staff. After school, several parents approached Leah at pickup. "We wanted to thank you," said Mrs. Chen, Zoe's mother. "It couldn't have been easy to speak up, but you've helped make the school better for all our children." Not everyone was supportive, though. A group of parents had formed a Support Principal Thornton committee. They argued that the school was overreacting to one incident and that changing discipline policies would lead to chaos in classrooms. "Rules exist for a reason," Mrs. Baker told a local news station. Tommy Baker's mother was leading the support group. "Children need to learn to follow them, not challenge authority every time they disagree." This divide created tension in the Idrifi Parent-Teacher Association and in the community. Some businesses displayed "Support Westbrook Teachers" signs in their windows. Others put up "Equal Rules for All Students" posters. One afternoon, Jamal overheard a heated argument between parents outside school. One man was saying the whole thing had been blown out of proportion. A woman responded that racism would never end if people kept denying its existence. "This is all your fault," Tommy Baker whispered to Jamal later that day. "Everyone was getting along fine before you made such a big deal about a stupid hoodie." The words stung, making Jamal wonder if he had caused more problems than solutions. That evening, he was quiet during dinner, pushing food around his plate. "What's wrong?" Leah asked. "Some people are really mad about what's happening," Jamal admitted. "They blame me for causing trouble." Leah set down her fork. "Change is hard, Jamal. It makes people uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean it isn't necessary." "But what if things get worse instead of better? Then we keep working until they get better," she said firmly. "Remember what Lewis Hamilton told you? Never stop believing you belong in every room you enter." Jamal nodded, finding comfort in those words. Later, he put on the Mission 44 hoodie and stood before his mirror. The person looking back at him seemed different somehow, stronger, more certain, ready to face whatever came next. He thought about Principal Thornton, wondering how she felt now. Was she angry? Sorry? Did she understand why her actions had hurt him? He hoped that someday they might actually talk about it, not as principal and student, but as two people trying to understand each other better. For now, though, he had other things to focus on. The British Grand Prix was approaching. Mission 44 had sent information about their visit to Silverstone, including details about the Mercedes team engineers he would meet. As he read through the materials, excitement pushed aside his worries. Whatever happened at school, whatever challenges lay ahead, no one could take away this opportunity. Lewis Hamilton believed in him. And slowly, Jamal was learning to believe in himself, too. The days leading up to the British Grand Prix seemed to crawl by. Jamal counted them down in his notebook, crossing off each evening before bed. At school, things continued to change. Vice Principal Rodriguez, now Acting Principal Rodriguez, had invited students to join the Policy Review Committee. Zoe Chen volunteered immediately, along with students from each grade. "You should join too," Zoe told Jamal during lunch. "Your voice matters most in this." Jamal hesitated. "I don't know. People already think I caused enough trouble." "That's exactly why you should do it," Tyler chimed in. "Show them this isn't about causing trouble. It's about making things better." After thinking it over, Jamal decided to join. The committee met twice a week after school, working to create clearer, fairer policies. At first, Jamal said little, listening as others shared ideas. But gradually, he found his voice. "Rules need to make sense," he said during one meeting. "And they need to be the same for everyone. If they're not, then they're not really rules. They're just a way to control certain people." Acting principle. Rodriguez looked surprised at his insight. Several teachers nodded in agreement. Even Tommy Baker, who had joined to make sure things didn't get too crazy, seemed to consider Jamal's words. At home, Jamal practiced what he would say when he met Lewis Hamilton. He had so many questions about racing, engineering, and standing. Up for what you believe in. Leah helped him prepare, reminding him to speak clearly and look people in the eye. "Just be yourself," she advised. "That's who Lewis Hamilton wants to meet." 2 days before their trip to Silverstone, a video call was arranged with Lewis and the Mission 44 team. They needed to finalize details and prepare Jamal for what to expect at the Grand Prix. When Lewis's face appeared on the screen, Jamal felt starstruck all over again. This was the 7-time world champion, talking directly to him from somewhere in Europe. "Hello, Jamal." "Hello, Leah." Lewis greeted them warmly. "How are things going with the school situation?" Leah updated him on the recent developments. Principal Thornton's leave, the policy committee, the community's mixed reactions. Lewis listened carefully, nodding. "That sounds like progress, even if it's not perfect," he said. "Change rarely happens all at once. Sometimes it feels like I made everything worse," Jamal admitted. Lewis shook his head. "You didn't create the problem, Jamal. You just made it visible. That takes courage." Then Lewis shared something he hadn't mentioned before. "When I was about your age, I loved wearing my hoodie too. It made me feel like myself, comfortable, confident. But I noticed something. When white kids wore hoodies at karting events, they were just kids being casual. When I wore mine, suddenly I was unprofessional or not taking things seriously." Jamal leaned forward, surprised. "What did you do?" "At first, I just accepted it. I stopped wearing my hoodie to avoid problems. But as I got older, I realized that wasn't the answer. The answer wasn't changing myself. It was changing the environment that judged me differently." Lewis's words resonated deeply with Jamal. Here was someone who truly understood, who had walked a similar path. "That's why I started Mission 44, Lewis continued, "to help create spaces where young people like you can be yourselves without facing unfair barriers." As the call continued, they discussed the upcoming Grand Prix visit. Lewis explained the EV schedule: a tour of the Mercedes garage, meetings with engineers, watching practice sessions, and special access during the race itself. "I have a surprise for you too," Lewis added with a smile, "but you'll have to wait until you're at Silverstone to find out what it is." After reviewing travel arrangements and security procedures, the call was about to end when Lewis asked to speak with Jamal alone for a moment. Leah stepped away, giving them privacy. "Jamal," Lewis said, his voice more serious now, "I want you to know something. Throughout my career, people have told me to just focus on racing and stay quiet about social issues. But some things are more important than staying comfortable or popular." Jamal nodded, understanding. "Your story has already inspired changes in schools beyond Westbrook," Lewis continued. "Mission 44 has been contacted by education authorities across the country asking for help reviewing their discipline policies. You've started something important." When the call ended, Jamal felt a new sense of purpose. It wasn't just about a hoodie anymore. It wasn't even just about him. It was about making spaces fairer for everyone. The day of the British Grand Prix finally arrived. Jamal woke before his alarm, too excited to sleep. He carefully chose his clothes, including his Mission 44 hoodie. Leah had taken a rare weekend off from the hospital, arranging for colleagues to cover her shifts. A car sent by Mission 44 picked them up early in the morning for the drive to Silverstone Circuit. As they approached the famous track, Jamal pressed, his face to the window, taking in the massive grandstands and colorful flags. "Look how many people," Amara exclaimed. She had been invited to join them after Lewis heard she was Jamal's sister. Their driver took them through a special entrance, away from the main crowds. A woman named Claire from the Mercedes team met them with passes on lanyards. "These are VIP access," she explained, placing one around each of their necks. "They'll get you into areas most fans never see." The noise hit them first as they walked toward the paddock. Engines revving, crowds cheering, announcers speaking over loudspeakers. The air smelled of rubber and fuel and excitement. Jamal tried to take it all in, not wanting to miss a single detail. Claire led them to the Mercedes garage, a pristine space filled with engineers in team uniforms working on car components. Tools and computers lined the walls. In the center stood a Formula One car, its silver and turquoise paint gleaming under bright lights. "This is last year's car that we use for demonstrations," Claire explained. "Lewis's race car is still being prepared." A tall engineer named Marcus introduced himself and began explaining how the car worked. Jamal listened intently, asking questions about aerodynamics and engine design that clearly impressed the team. "You really know your stuff," Marcus said with a smile. "Have you studied engineering?" "Just on my own," Jamal replied. "I like to understand how things work." As the tour continued, more team members stopped to greet them. Everyone seemed to know who Jamal was and why he was there. One engineer whispered to Leah, "Lewis told us all about your son's situation. We're proud he's standing up for what's right." They were exploring the engineering station when a familiar voice called out behind them, "Well, look who's made it to Silverstone!" Jamal turned to see Lewis Hamilton walking toward them, dressed in his racing suit with the top half tied around his waist. In person, he seemed both larger than life and completely normal at the same time. "Lewis!" Jamal exclaimed, then immediately felt embarrassed at his outburst. Lewis laughed and extended his hand. "Great to finally meet you in person, Jamal." He greeted Leah and Amara as well, making them feel instantly welcome. "What do you think of the setup?" Lewis asked, gesturing around the garage. "It's amazing," Jamal replied. "I never imagined all the technology and people it takes to make a race happen." Lewis nodded. "It's truly a team sport, even though only one person drives the car. Everyone here plays a crucial role." For the next hour, Lewis showed them around personally, introducing them to team members and explaining details of race strategy. He answered Jamal's questions patiently, clearly enjoying the boys' curiosity and knowledge. Then Lewis checked his watch. "I've got a team meeting soon, but first, that surprise I mentioned." He led them to a private room where a box sat on a table. "This is for you, Jamal." Inside was a racing helmet, painted in the same colors as Lewis's, but with Jamal's name on the side. Next to it lay a pair of racing gloves, also custom-made. "These aren't just replicas," Lewis explained. "The helmet is built to the same safety specifications as mine, and I've signed both items for you." Jamal carefully lifted the helmet, hardly believing it was real. "Thank you," he whispered, unable to find better words. "There's one more thing," Lewis added. "Mission 44 is launching a new STEM program for students interested in motorsport engineering. We'd like you to be one of our first participants." The PEAK program would provide mentoring, educational resources, and hands-on experience with racing technology. It was designed for promising young students from underrepresented backgrounds. Really? Jamal looked to his mother, who seemed equally amazed. Really? Lewis confirmed. Your knowledge and passion for engineering impressed everyone. We need minds like yours in this sport. As Lewis left for his meeting, promising to catch up with them after the race, Jamal held the helmet close to his chest. This wasn't just a souvenir. It was a symbol of possibility, of futures he hadn't dared to imagine before. They watched the race from the Mercedes box, cheering as Lewis battled for position on the track. The noise was deafening, the energy electric. Jamal studied everything: how the team communicated with Lewis during the race, how they tracked data from the car, how split-second decisions could change the outcome. By day's end, as they boarded the train home with the signed helmet, carefully placed on the seat between them, both Jamal and Leah were quiet, processing everything they had experienced. "Are you happy?" Leah finally asked, watching her son's thoughtful expression. Jamal nodded slowly. "I'm more than happy, Mom. I'm inspired." On Monday morning, Jamal walked into school wearing his Mission 44 hoodie, head held high. The hallways seemed different somehow. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. Students noticed the hoodie immediately. Some pointed and whispered. Others offered smiles of support. Tyler gave him a fist bump as they met at their lockers. "Bold move," Tyler said, nodding at the hoodie. Jamal shrugged. "It's just a piece of clothing. That's the whole point." Their first class was with Ms. Lakshmi, who smiled when she saw Jamal's hoodie, but said nothing about it. Instead, she announced, "An exciting project. We'll be studying renewable energy systems for racing vehicles," she explained. "Formula One is actually leading some impressive sustainability initiatives." Jamal sat up straighter, his weekend at Silverstone fresh in his mind. When Ms. Lakshmi asked for questions, his hand shot up first. "I learned that F1 cars use hybrid engines with energy recovery systems," he said. "They capture energy during braking and reuse it for acceleration." Ms. Lakshmi looked impressed. "That's exactly right, Jamal. Perhaps you could share more of what you learned with the class?" By lunchtime, word had spread that Jamal had met Lewis Hamilton and visited the Mercedes garage. Even Tommy Baker seemed interested, asking questions about the race cars and drivers. After school, Jamal attended another meeting of the Policy Review Committee. Acting Principal Rodriguez had prepared copies of the current dress code policy, with problematic sections highlighted. "Our goal is to create rules that are clear, necessary, and applied fairly to all students," she explained. "Let's start by identifying what's working and what isn't." The discussion was lively. Parents pointed out vague language that left too much room for interpretation. Teachers admitted struggling to enforce rules consistently. Students shared experiences of feeling targeted or embarrassed by dress code violations. "The hoodie rule doesn't even make sense," Zoe said. "Why ban something warm when the heating breaks down every winter? And why are some students allowed to break it while others get suspended?" added Mr. Osei, who had joined the committee as a community representative. By the end of the meeting, they had drafted a new policy that focused on respect and inclusion rather than control. Clothing restrictions were limited to items that were truly disruptive or unsafe. Most importantly, a system was created to track and review how rules were enforced, looking for any patterns of bias. As weeks passed, changes spread beyond the dress code. The anonymous reporting system that Dr. Clark had promised was implemented, allowing students to safely report unfair treatment. Teachers received training on recognizing and addressing implicit bias. School assemblies now included discussions about respect and belonging. One morning, Jamal arrived at school to find a new poster on the bulletin board. "Respect for all" was printed at the top, with photos of diverse students engaged in various school activities. It was part of a campaign created by the Student Equity Council, a new group that had formed in the wake of Jamal's case. "We want you to join," Zoe told him during lunch. She had been elected president of the council. "We need more 7th grade. Representatives?" "I don't know," Jamal hesitated. "I'm already busy with the policy committee and my schoolwork." "Just come to one meeting," Zoe pressed. "You inspired this whole thing. You should be part of it." Reluctantly, Jamal agreed to attend a meeting. To his surprise, he found himself enjoying the discussions about how to make school a fairer, more welcoming place for everyone. The group was working on ideas for cultural celebrations, peer mentoring programs, and ways to make sure all students had access to school events regardless of financial barriers. "You should lead the STEM subcommittee," Zoe suggested. "We want to encourage more girls and students of color to join science and tech activities." Jamal thought about Lewis Hamilton's words about changing environments that judged people unfairly. Maybe this was a way to put those words into action. "Okay," he agreed. "I'll do it." Meanwhile, Jamal's story continued to create ripples beyond Westbrook. Mission 44's research into dress code enforcement received national attention. Their report, titled "Unequal Standards: Racial Disparities in School Dress Code Enforcement," included data from hundreds of schools across the country. The findings were clear. Black students were disciplined for dress code violations at much higher rates than white students, even when wearing identical items. The report included recommendations for creating fairer policies, many based on the changes being implemented at Westbrook. In response, the Department of Education issued new guidance to schools nationwide, encouraging them to review their discipline practices for evidence of bias. News programs featured experts discussing the school-to-prison pipeline and how seemingly small policies could have major impacts on students' educational opportunities. Leah was invited to speak at educational conferences about her family's experience. Though nervous at first, she found her voice growing stronger with each presentation. "One hoodie, one cold day, one question about fairness," she would begin. That's all it took to reveal patterns that had been hurting children for years. Local community organizations began partnering with Mission 44 to create after-school STEM programs for underrepresented students. Jamal helped design activities for the engineering club, sharing what he had learned from the Mercedes team. "Sometimes it takes one brave family to create change for many," Mr. Osei told Leah one evening as they watched Jamal helping younger children build simple electric circuits. "Your son has made a difference that will last long after this story." Fades from the news. At school, Ms. Lakshmi pulled Jamal aside after class one day. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I knew the hoodie rule was being applied unfairly. I saw it happen many times before your suspension, but I never spoke up." Jamal wasn't sure how to respond. "I was afraid of causing trouble," she continued. "Afraid of being labeled difficult. But watching you and your mother stand up for what's right gave me courage. I'll never stay silent again when I see injustice." Her words stayed with Jamal. He had never thought of himself as brave or influential. He had just wanted to stay warm and be treated fairly. Yet somehow, his small act of questioning had grown into something much larger. One afternoon, Jamal received an email from Jason at Mission 44. The STEM program Lewis had mentioned was ready to launch, and they wanted Jamal to be among the first students. The program would include online learning modules, mentoring sessions with industry professionals, and weekend workshops at partner facilities. "This is amazing!" Leah exclaimed when he showed her the email. "Are you going to accept?" Jamal nodded eagerly. "Of course! I can't wait to learn more about racing engineering." That evening, as he completed the application form, Jamal reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. From a suspension that had felt like the end of the world to opportunities he could never have imagined. From feeling powerless to helping create new policies that would affect future students. He paused at the question asking about his career goals. Before, he might have written something general about wanting to be an engineer. Now, he typed confidently, "I want to design safer, more sustainable racing cars and create pathways for other underrepresented students to enter motorsport engineering." The next day at school, Acting Principal Rodriguez made an announcement that sent ripples through the hallways. Dr. Marcus Johnson had been hired as the new permanent principal of Westbrook Middle School. He was a respected educator known for his commitment to equity and excellence, with experience transforming school cultures. Dr. Johnson would start the following month, after the winter break. Principal Thornton had decided to take early retirement, a development that surprised no one, but still felt significant. A chapter was closing, making room for something new to begin. That afternoon, in science class, Ms. Lakshmi announced a prestigious regional science competition. "I encourage all of you to consider entering," she said, "especially those with interests in environmental science or engineering." After class, she approached Jamal. "You should submit your solar energy project, the one you've been expanding. It shows real promise." Jamal hesitated. "Do you really think it's good enough?" "I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't," she replied. "And regardless of how the competition turns out, the experience will be valuable for your future." Her confidence in him meant more than she could know. Just months ago, he had been the boy sent to the office, the troublemaker. Now he was being encouraged to represent his school in a science competition. As he walked home that afternoon, Jamal felt a sense of possibility that extended far beyond school walls or science competitions. The world seemed bigger somehow, filled with paths he could explore and spaces where he belonged. What had started with a simple question, "Why can they wear hoodies but I can't?" had opened doors he never knew existed. And as he reached his apartment building, where Mr. Osei was sweeping the front steps just as he had on that cold October day, Jamal realized something important. Speaking up didn't just change rules or policies. It changed people. Sometimes it even changed yourself. "You look happy," Mr. Osei observed, leaning on his broom. "I am," Jamal replied, surprised to find it was true. Despite all the challenges of the past months, he felt a new kind of confidence growing inside him. "Good news to share?" Mr. Osei asked. Jamal grinned. "Lewis Hamilton invited me to the British Grand Prix again. But this time, I'm going as part of the Mission A44 STEM program, not just a visitor." 6 months had passed since Jamal's first visit to Silverstone. In that time, he had completed online engineering modules, participated in virtual mentoring sessions, and even built a small working model of an F1 energy recovery system for his science project. The project had won first place at the regional science competition, much to Ms. Lakshmi's delight. Jamal's design used recycled materials to demonstrate how kinetic energy could be captured and reused, inspired by the systems he had learned about from the Mercedes engineers. Now summer had arrived, and with it, the British Grand Prix. This time, Jamal wasn't just attending as Lewis Hamilton's guest. He was one of 20 students selected for a special 3-day program at Silverstone, combining educational workshops with behind-the-scenes access during the race weekend. "You've earned this opportunity," Leah told him as they packed his suitcase, the night before their trip. "I'm so proud of how hard you've worked." Jamal carefully placed his notebook of questions and design ideas in his backpack. Over the months, He had filled it with sketches and notes from his online sessions with Mission 44 mentors. "Do you think I could really work in Formula One someday?" he asked his mother. "I have no doubt," she replied. Lewis Hamilton didn't become a champion by accident, and neither will you. It takes talent, yes, but also determination and hard work. You've shown you have all three. The next morning, they boarded the train to Silverstone. Unlike their first visit, Jamal felt prepared. This time, he knew what to expect, what questions to ask, how to make the most of this opportunity. When they arrived, Claire from the Mercedes team greeted them like old friends. "The engineering group is excited to see your energy recovery model," she told Jamal. "Lewis mentioned your science competition win." A flush of pride warmed Jamal's cheeks. Lewis Hamilton had been talking about his project. Their accommodations were at a hotel near the track, shared with other Mission 44 students and their families. Jamal recognized some faces from online sessions: Maya from Manchester, whose robotics designs had impressed their mentors; Tayo from London, who had created a virtual reality racing simulator; Priya from Leeds, whose aerodynamics research had won a national award. "It's nice to finally meet in person," Maya said when they gathered for orientation. "Your energy recovery system inspired my latest project." The first day was filled with workshops led by racing engineers. They explained how computer simulations helped design faster, safer cars. They demonstrated how materials science contributed to creating lightweight but strong components. They showed how data analytics improved race strategy. Jamal absorbed everything, asking questions that impressed even the most experienced engineers. His months of study with Mission 44 had prepared him well. "You're catching on quickly," remarked Marcus, the same engineer who had given Jamal his first tour 6 months earlier. "Most people take years to understand these concepts." On the second day, the students were divided into teams for a design challenge. Each team had to create a modification that would improve either the safety, sustainability, or speed of a Formula One car. Jamal worked with Maya, Tayo, and a quiet boy named Elliot from Scotland. "We should focus on sustainability," Jamal suggested. "What if we design a way to use recycled carbon fiber in non-structural components?" His teammates agreed. They spent hours researching, calculating, and drawing their design. When it was time to present, Jamal felt nervous but prepared. He explained their idea clearly, answering technical questions with confidence. The judges, real Formula One engineers, nodded approvingly. "This shows genuine innovation," one commented. "You've considered manufacturing challenges as well as environmental benefits." Their team won the challenge, earning them special access to the pit lane during the next day's practice sessions. As they celebrated, Jamal caught Leah watching him from across the room, her eyes shining with pride. That evening, Lewis Hamilton made a surprise appearance at their dinner. He moved from table to table, greeting students and families, asking about their projects and aspirations. When he reached Jamal, he clasped his hand warmly. "I hear your team won the design challenge. Well done." "Thank you," Jamal replied, still a bit starstruck despite their previous meetings. "We used some concepts I learned from your engineers during my first visit." Lewis smiled. "That's what this is all about. Passing knowledge forward, creating opportunities. Remember when we first met? You were worried about causing trouble at school. Now, look at you, designing innovations that could shape the future of racing." The third day, race day, arrived with bright sunshine and excitement crackling in the air. The Mission 44 students had special viewing positions where they could watch the teams prepare their cars. Engineers explained each step of the process: the final adjustments to wing angles, the precise tire pressure checks, the careful fueling procedures. Jamal noted everything in his notebook, sketching diagrams and jotting down questions to research later. As race time approached, the students and families were escorted to the Mercedes box. Sophisticated screens displayed real-time data from the cars. Team members explained what they were monitoring: tire temperatures, fuel consumption, rival positions. When the race began, the roar of engines vibrated through Jamal's chest. 20 cars accelerated away from the starting grid. Lewis Hamilton's among them, fighting for position into the first corner. "This is incredible," Jamal whispered to his mother. She squeezed his hand in response, her eyes fixed on the action. Throughout the race, team engineers explained strategy decisions to the students, why they called for pit stops when they did, how they adjusted to changing weather conditions, what data they used to advise Lewis through his earpiece. Jamal watched Lewis battle for position lap after lap. The champion driver seemed to dance, on the edge of control, finding speed where others couldn't, making passes that seemed impossible. "That's why he's won 7 world championships," Marcus explained. "It's not just talent. It's thousands of hours of practice, constant learning, and unshakable focus." When Lewis crossed the finish line in second place, the Mercedes box erupted in cheers. Not a win, but a strong result on a challenging track. Lewis's voice came through the speakers as he thanked his team over the radio, his breathing heavy from the physical effort of racing. After the podium ceremony, Lewis made time to visit with the Mission 44 students again. Still in his racing suit, damp with sweat and champagne, he looked energized rather than exhausted. "I hope you all learned something today," he told them. "Racing isn't just about driving fast. It's about teamwork, innovation, and perseverance. The same skills that will help you succeed in whatever career you choose." He turned to Jamal. "And sometimes it's about asking difficult questions, even when it would be easier to stay quiet." As the day ended and families prepared to leave, Lewis pulled Jamal aside for a private word. "I want you to know something," he said quietly. "Your story has already inspired changes in schools beyond Westbrook. Mission 44 has been contacted by education authorities across the country, asking for help reviewing their discipline policies." Jamal hadn't known this. "Really?" Lewis nodded. "Really? Sometimes one brave voice is all it takes to start a movement. Remember that, whatever challenges you face in the future." On the train ride home, Jamal and Leah sat quietly, processing the incredible weekend. The signed helmet from Lewis's first race of the season sat carefully on the seat between them. "What are you thinking about?" Leah finally asked, noticing her son's thoughtful expression. "Everything that's happened since that day I got suspended," Jamal replied. "If you had told me then that I'd be learning from Formula One engineers and helping change school policies, I never would have believed it." "Life takes unexpected turns," Leah said. "The question is what we do with those turns when they come." Smolkider Wales nodded, running his fingers over the smooth surface of the helmet. In its reflection, he saw a different person than the boy who had been sent to the principal's office 6 months ago. That boy had felt powerless. This one knew his voice mattered. As the English countryside flashed by outside the window, Jamal made a quiet promise to himself. He would use this opportunity not just to build his own future, but to create paths for others to follow, just as Lewis Hamilton had done for him. Summer passed quickly. Jamal spent his days attending virtual workshops with Mission 44, building small engineering projects, and enjoying time with friends. The suspension that had once seemed like the end of the world now felt like a distant memory, the beginning of an unexpected journey rather than an ending. When September arrived, bringing cooler air and falling leaves, it was time for a new school year. Jamal stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting his uniform tie. He was now an 8th grader, one of the older students at Westbrook Middle School. "Are you nervous?" Leah asked, appearing in his doorway. "A little," Jamal admitted. "Everything will be different this year." The biggest change waited at school. Dr. Marcus Johnson, the new principal who had been hired to replace Principal Thornton. No one knew much about him, except that he had a strong reputation for creating positive school environments. "Remember, change can be good," Leah said, straightening Jamal's collar. "And you've faced tougher challenges than a new principal." When they arrived at school, Jamal noticed the differences immediately. Bright banners welcomed students back with messages like, "Everyone belongs at Westbrook," and "Respect, responsibility, community." The main hallway featured a new display case showing student achievements from various backgrounds: academic awards, sports trophies, art projects, community service recognition. The first assembly of the year took place in the gymnasium. Students filed in, buzzing with excitement and nervousness about the new school year. Acting Principal Rodriguez, now back to being Vice Principal Rodriguez, introduced Dr. Johnson to the school. He was a tall man with a close-cropped beard and glasses, dressed in a navy blue suit. His smile seemed genuine as he approached the microphone. "Good morning, Westbrook students," he began, his voice warm and clear. "I'm excited to join this community and get to know each of you. Before I was a principal, I was a science teacher. Before that, I was a student just like you, sometimes confident, sometimes confused, always learning." He paused, looking around. "The gymnasium. Every one of you belongs here. Every one of you deserves to be treated with respect and fairness. That's not just a nice idea. It's the foundation of everything we'll do this year." Dr. Johnson went on to outline his vision for the school: high academic standards alongside strong social-emotional support. Clear rules applied consistently to all students. Open communication between staff, students, and families. Last year, this school community began an important conversation about fairness, he said. "I'm here to continue that conversation and turn it into lasting change." Jamal felt eyes turning toward him. Everyone knew which conversation about fairness Dr. Johnson meant, but rather than shrinking from the attention, Jamal sat up straighter. He wasn't ashamed of what had happened. It had been necessary. After the assembly, students moved to their homerooms to receive schedules. Jamal's homeroom teacher was Ms. Lakshmi, which made him smile. Her classroom felt like a safe space. "Welcome back, everyone," Ms. Lakshmi greeted them. "I hope you're ready for an exciting year of learning." As she distributed schedules, she paused at Jamal's desk. "I heard about your success at the British Grand Prix program," she said quietly. "I'm not surprised. Your scientific thinking has always been exceptional." Her words warmed him. Ms. Lakshmi had been one of the few teachers who supported him during the difficult days after his suspension. Now she was acknowledging his growth beyond that incident, seeing him as more than the Hoodie boy. The Student Equity Council had grown over the summer. When they held their first meeting of the new year, nearly 30 students attended, from all grades, backgrounds, and social groups. Zoe Chen remained president, with Jamal now formally leading the STEM subcommittee. "We have big plans this year," Zoe announced. The Respect for All campaign was just the beginning. Now we want to create real opportunities for students who've been left out. Jamal's subcommittee was tasked with making science and technology activities more accessible and welcoming. He thought about his experiences with Mission 44 and how they had changed his view of what was possible. "What if we started a mentoring program?" he suggested. Eighth graders could work with younger students on science projects, especially those who might not have support at home. The idea was enthusiastically approved. By October, Jamal was leading a small group of mentors who met twice weekly with 5th and 6th grade students interested in science. One afternoon, as the mentoring session was ending, Dr. Johnson stopped by to observe. He watched from the doorway as Jamal patiently helped a younger student understand the principles of simple circuits. "You're a natural teacher," Dr. Johnson commented afterward. "You explain complex ideas in ways that make sense." "Thank you, sir," Jamal replied, still getting used to the new principal's direct but friendly style. Dr. Johnson leaned against a desk. "I've read about what happened last year. The Hoodie incident, the suspension, everything that followed." Jamal tensed slightly, unsure where this conversation was heading. "I want you to know that I admire how you handled it," Dr. Johnson continued. "You stood up for yourself, but stayed focused on making things better, not just complaining. That shows character." The compliment meant more than Jamal expected. Coming from the new principal, someone with no connection to the original incident, it felt like validation. "We're still working on the new policies," Jamal said. "The committee meets every other week." Dr. Johnson nodded. "I know. I've been reading the minutes from those meetings. You all are doing important work that will help this school for years to come." Throughout the fall term, the changes at Westbrook became more visible. The Student Equity Council's mentoring program expanded to include math, writing, and art. The revised dress code, clear, reasonable, and applied equally to all students, was officially adopted by the school board. Most significantly, the anonymous Sit-en-Fait reporting system showed results. When instances of unfair treatment were reported, they were promptly addressed rather than ignored. Teachers received additional training on creating inclusive classrooms where all students could thrive. Not everyone embraced the changes. Tommy Baker and a few others complained that the school was too focused on feelings and not strict enough anymore. Some parents still argued that traditional discipline was being undermined. But the overall atmosphere at Westbrook had shifted. Students walked the hallways more confidently. Teachers seemed more engaged with their classes. Even the building itself felt different, brighter somehow, more welcoming. One day in November, Ms. Lakshmi asked Jamal to stay after science class. "I want to talk to you about something important," she said when the other students had left. Jamal waited, curious. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened last year," Ms. Lakshmi began. "When you were suspended for the Hoodie, many of us teachers saw the unfairness, but we stayed silent. I've regretted that silence every day." Jamal hadn't expected this conversation. "It's okay, Ms. Lakshmi. You helped me catch up afterward." She shook her head. "That wasn't enough. I should have spoken up when I saw the pattern of unequal treatment. I was afraid. Afraid of creating conflict. Afraid of being labeled difficult. But my silence allowed the unfairness to continue." Her eyes were earnest behind her glasses. "I wanted to tell you I'm sorry, and to thank you for having the courage I lacked. You've made this school better for everyone." Jamal didn't know what to say. He had never thought about how teachers might feel caught in the middle of unfair systems, too. "Thank you for telling me," he finally replied, "and for supporting me now," Ms. Lakshmi smiled. "I also wanted to let you know about an advanced science program at the secondary school. It's for students interested in engineering. The application deadline is next month, and I think you should apply." She handed him a brochure describing the program: special classes, lab access, mentoring from industry professionals. It looked perfect for his interests. "I'll help you with the application if you'd like," she offered. As Jamal walked home that afternoon, the brochure tucked safely in his backpack, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not pride exactly, but something quieter and more lasting. The knowledge that standing up for what was right had created ripples that continued to spread. Mr. Osei was outside their apartment building, planting flower bulbs in the small garden area. "They won't bloom until spring," he explained when Jamal stopped to help. "But that's how life works. You plant seeds now for flowers you'll see months later." Jamal thought about all the seeds that had been planted over the past year, the OD policy changes, the Student Equity Council, the mentoring program, his own growing confidence. Some were already blooming. Others would take time to show their full beauty. As he pressed a bulb into the cool earth, he realized that speaking up that October day had been just such a seed. Small, seemingly insignificant, yet containing within it the potential for unexpected growth. 1 year had passed since Jamal's suspension for wearing a hoodie. Autumn had returned to Birmingham, bringing cool mornings and early sunsets. But this October was different from the last. Jamal was different, too, more confident, more purposeful, more aware of his own power to create change. "You've got mail," Leah announced one Saturday morning, handing him an envelope with the Mission 44 logo. "Looks important." Jamal opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation. Mission 44 Foundation proudly invites Jamal Washington to attend our anniversary celebration, honoring the achievements of our educational equity initiatives. London, October 22nd. A handwritten note from Lewis Hamilton was included. "Jamal, we'd like you to speak at the event about your experience. Your story matters." Lewis, "Speak? In front of people?" Jamal's voice cracked with nervousness. "I don't know if I can do that." "Of course you can," Leah reassured him. "You've presented to your science class. You've led the Student Equity Council meetings. This is just a bigger audience." "But there will be important people there," Jamal protested. "What if I mess up?" Leah sat beside him on the couch. "Remember when you asked Principal Thornton why other students could wear hoodies but you couldn't? That took courage. Speaking about it now will too." Over the next 2 weeks, Jamal worked on his speech with help from Mr. Osei, who had experience with public speaking through his community organizing. They crafted a 3-minute talk about Jamal's journey from suspension to advocacy. "Don't just tell them what happened," Mr. Osei advised. "Tell them what you learned and how it changed you." The day of the celebration arrived. Jamal and Leah traveled to London by train, Amara staying with a neighbor for the evening. Jamal wore his best suit, a gift from his father, who had become more involved in his life since the Hoodie incident made the news. The event was held at a grand hotel in central London. The ballroom was filled with round tables, a stage at the ETIOE front with large screens displaying the Mission 44. Guests included educators, business leaders, government officials, and students from Mission 44 war programs. "There are so many people," Jamal whispered to his mother as they found their assigned table near the front. "And they're all here because they believe in the same things you do," she reminded him. "Equal opportunities for all young people." Throughout dinner, speakers shared stories of Mission 44's impact over the past year. Research findings about educational inequity, policy changes that had been implemented in schools across the country, success stories of students who had overcome barriers through the Foundation's programs. Then it was time for Jamal's part of the program. A staff member led him backstage, where he found Lewis Hamilton waiting. "Nervous?" Lewis asked with an understanding smile. Jamal nodded, unable to speak. Me too, every time, Lewis admitted. But you know what helps? Remembering why you're speaking. Not for yourself, but for all the other kids who might face what you faced. Lewis placed a reassuring hand on Jamal's shoulder. Just speak from your heart. That's always enough. Then it was time. Lewis went on stage first, welcomed by enthusiastic applause. Tonight, we're celebrating 1 year of expanded educational initiatives at Mission 44, he began. We've achieved so much, but our work continues because the need continues. Inequity doesn't disappear overnight. It requires persistent effort and brave voices calling for change. He paused, looking toward the side of the stage where Jamal waited. One such voice belongs to a remarkable young man I've had the privilege to know this past year. His courage in questioning unfair treatment led to policy changes that have improved school experiences for countless students. Please welcome Jamal Washington. The Teak. Audience applauded as Jamal walked onto the stage, his legs feeling strangely distant from his body. He took a deep breath, focusing on his mother's proud face in the front row. My name is Jamal Washington, he began, his voice steadier than he expected. 1 year ago, I was suspended from school for wearing a hoodie on a cold day. Other students, white students, wore hoodies without consequences. When I asked why, I was labeled defiant and sent home. As he continued his story, the nervousness faded. He described the community's response, the Policy Review Committee, the Student Equity Council that formed in the wake of his case. What happened to me wasn't unique, Jamal explained. It was just visible. Mission 44's research has shown that dress codes and other seemingly neutral policies are often applied differently based on a student's race. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge? He shared what he had learned from the experience, that speaking up matters, that systems can change when people work together, that young people have more power than they realize. Today, my school is different. Not perfect, but better. Students feel more valued. Teachers are more aware of bias. New leadership is committed to fairness. And I've discovered opportunities I never knew existed, including my passion for engineering through Mission 44's STEM program. As Jamal finished his speech, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Lewis Hamilton returned to the stage, embracing him warmly before taking the microphone again. Thank you, Jamal, for sharing your journey so eloquently, Lewis said. Your story reminds us why this work matters. Then Lewis's expression became more serious. There's something I haven't shared publicly before. When I was about Jamal's age, I too was nearly forced out of a space where I belonged because of a hoodie. The audience grew quiet, surprised by this personal revelation. I was competing in a karting event, one of the few black drivers in the competition. I wore my hoodie in the paddock area between races, just like many other young drivers. But while they were left alone, I was told my hoodie was unprofessional and against the rules. I was warned that continued violations would result in my removal from the competition. Lewis paused, the memory clearly still affecting him. At that age, I didn't have the words to explain the unfairness. I just knew it hurt. I knew I was being judged by a different standard, and I knew if I wanted to succeed in motorsport, I would have to work twice as hard and be twice as professional as my white counterparts. Jamal listened, stunned. Lewis Hamilton, world champion, global sports icon, had faced the same unfair treatment that he had. The realization was both painful and validating. When I saw Jamal's story, Lewis continued, I recognized the pattern immediately. Different rules for different people. using clothing as a way to exclude those who already face barriers. That's why Mission 44 took action, not just for Jamal, but for all the young people who experience these subtle forms of exclusion every day. Lewis shared that Mission 44's research had now documented similar cases in over 200 schools across the UK, leading to nationwide policy reforms and mandatory equity training for school administrators. The hoodie isn't really the issue, Lewis explained. It never was. The issue is belonging. Who gets to belong without question, and who has to constantly prove they deserve to be there? As the program continued, Lewis announced a new mission: 44 Scholarship Program for underrepresented students pursuing STEM careers. Jamal was named as one of the first recipients, guaranteeing support through his secondary education and beyond if he maintained his academic excellence. From his seat back at the table, Jamal noticed movement at the back of the ballroom. A woman was quietly taking a seat at a far table, arriving late for the event. With a shock, he recognized her. Principal Thornton. She looked different somehow, smaller, less intimidating. As applause filled the room for the scholarship announcement, she remained still, her expression unreadable, as she witnessed the positive changes that had grown from her actions that October day. After the formal program ended, guests mingled in the ballroom. Jamal accepted congratulations from people he'd never met, educational leaders who promised to bring Mission 44's recommendations to their schools, engineers who offered him business cards and future internship opportunities. Then, unexpectedly, he found himself face to face with Principal Thornton. "Hello, Jamal," she said quietly. "Congratulations on your scholarship." "Thank you," he replied, uncertain what else to say to the woman who had suspended him a year ago. "I came to learn," she said, after an awkward pause, "about how schools can do better. I'm working with a teacher training program now, helping new educators understand the impact of their decisions." She hesitated. "Your story, it made me reconsider many things." Before Jamal could respond, Lewis Hamilton approached them. "Jamal, there are some engineering students from Imperial College who'd love to meet you," he said, then noticed Principal H.T. Thornton. Something in his expression suggested he knew exactly who she was. "Excuse us," Lewis said politely, guiding Jamal away with a gentle hand on his shoulder. As they walked across the ballroom, Lewis leaned down slightly. Sometimes the people who resist change the most are the ones who need to see it happening. Her being here tonight is a good sign. The evening concluded with Lewis taking Jamal and several other young scholarship recipients for a private conversation. They gathered in a small meeting room away from the crowds, talking easily about their dreams and challenges. "I have one more piece of advice for all of you," Lewis said, as they prepared to leave. "Throughout my career, people have told me to stick to racing and stay quiet about social issues. But some things are more important than staying comfortable or popular." He looked at each of them in turn. "When you see unfairness, speak up. When spaces try to exclude you, refuse to leave. And when you achieve your goals, remember to create paths for others to follow." On the train ride back to Birmingham, Jamal and Leah talked about the evening, the scholarship, the speeches, the unexpected appearance of Principal Thornton. What Lewis said about the hoodie incident he experienced. "Did you know about that before?" Leah asked. Jamal shook his head. "No, he never mentioned it during our other conversations. That must have been difficult for him to share publicly." "I think that's why he did it," Jamal said thoughtfully, "to show that these things happen at all levels, even to people like him, and that talking about them is how we make change." The next day, Jamal and Lewis had arranged to meet once more. The champion driver was taking a rare day off from his intense schedule to visit a new Mission 44 engineering lab in Birmingham, and he had invited Jamal to join him. As they walked through the state-of-the-art facility, Jamal showed Lewis the safety system design he had been working on, an improvement to the head protection in racing helmets. "This could really make a difference," Lewis said, examining the drawings. "Have you considered how it might be adapted for different racing categories?" They spent the next hour discussing technical details, with Lewis offering insights from his racing experience. Two engineers from the lab joined them, adding their expertise to the conversation. As they prepared to leave, Lewis and Jamal walked together toward the exit. "You know," Lewis said, "sometimes the rules are made to keep people like us out. But when we fight those rules together, we don't just make space for ourselves. We change the track for everyone who comes after us." Jamal nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind Lewis's words. What had started with a hoodie had become about so much more, about belonging, about fairness, about creating change that would outlast any single moment of injustice. As they stepped outside into the autumn sunshine, Jamal realized that his journey wasn't ending. It was just beginning. The seed planted that cold October day would continue to grow in ways he couldn't yet imagine, creating flowers that would bloom for seasons to come. Thank you so much for listening to Jamal's journey from unfair suspension to becoming an agent of change with Lewis Hamilton's support. Where are you listening from? I'd love to know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about standing up for what's right, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring content like this. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family who might benefit from Jamal and Lewis Hamilton's message of perseverance and advocacy. Together, we can spread kindness and awareness about the importance of equal treatment for all. Until next time.